There's got to be like a million different ways to do this Batman ranking video, but for this video, the rubric will be as follows. If the Batman film was released in theaters, then itself qualifies entry into this Ramey ranking. And based on those rules, I have compiled 13 movies that you see right here. So we'll be ranking them from the lowest to the top. And this is a very personal video, a very opinionated video. This is my personal top 13 Batman movies from top to bottom. And I think that's a lot more fun. And it's not really objective, but I would like to look back in like 10, 20, 30 years if I'm still alive and see if my opinions changed at all. So I think that's everything for the rubric. Also, for every film, I'm going to share my favorite scene as well. So even for the bottom tier movies, there's something positive to say with the inherent negativity. Number 13. Now, this movie, obviously, it being at the bottom, is the most least enjoyable Batman film for me to watch by far. And that is on many factors. That's not just the film alone. The build up to this movie was incredibly toxic and taxing and not fun at all. It was coming off the heels off of a rebranding of the DC universe, especially on film, and Warner Brothers was attempting to build and copy their own Marvel universe, and they completely rushed into it without a real plan or a good plan. And that is the result we got. And obviously this movie is 2017's Justice League. It is very bare bones, very average, and just absent of any kind of identity whatsoever. Most of the film was accomplished by Zack Snyder and his team, but about nearing the end of the production of the film, he had a personal tragedy in his family, so he obviously stepped down. And Warner Brothers, they could not have made it more obvious of what they were really trying to do. They were just trying to catch up to Marvel and make their own universe to make money off that. And that was a time frame where everyone was trying to do that. Universal was trying to build their own monster movie universe, and everyone was trying to ride and do their own Marvel universe. And they could have made it more obvious. They literally brought in Joss Whedon, the guy that directed the Avengers, to do their Avengers DC film, the Justice League. They knew they wanted to go away from Zack Snyder, but they didn't necessarily know what to do. And I think they thought just bringing in Joss Whedon would lighten up the movie a little bit more and kind of get away from that more darker tone that Zack Snyder liked to do in like BVS and Man of Steel and other films. But it just created this conflict of tone where one scene, it feels like a Zack Snyder film, and then the next scene feels like a mockery of the Avengers. So the film is just never consistent tonally, and it's an absolute mess. And you can just tell the actors weren't really into it. The build up to the movie, the interviews, everything was just so toxic, how divided the fan base was. I hated all of it. It is by far my least favorite time being a Batman fan. And yeah, it was just overall not enjoyable, the whole experience. So anytime I watch the movie or think about it, I just kind of think about that whole journey to get to the movie, and then ended up being just very bland. This being a Batman list, talk about Ben Affleck, I thought this was his worst appearance as Batman. He was just there as Batman. He didn't really add anything to the character, and honestly, he was one of my least favorite characters in the movie, and that's saying a lot because I really didn't like anyone in the movie. The whole Justice League was it just seemed like no one cared, and I actually do, even though the Zack Snyder cut, is not on this list because it's a movie, and it's a real movie. I almost said it's not a real movie. It is a real movie, but it's not, it didn't get a theatrical release. It wasn't, put out in theaters for an extended period of time. So I don't think it necessarily counts. I do enjoy that movie more, not much more, but I can respect it more because it is a consistent tone. So I just want to say, I guess I have to talk about Snyder Cut a little bit. It's a little bit above this Justice League, but not much more. That whole thing, and then the whole Snyder bullshit that's still somewhat going on for some reason. I think people just need to leave that behind, but whatever. That's number 13, Justice League. And my favorite scene in the movie is when it ended. I honestly tried. I looked, I scoured the internet, watched a bunch of, I couldn't watch the movie again. I just watched clips of the movie, and I just could not think in my head, what scene did I actually really enjoy in the movie, and everything was just kind of like to me, just very meh. And honestly, yeah, my favorite scene was when it ended. No joke. Number 12. So this movie is obviously paired with Justice League very closely. It was the beginning of the DCEU, and I was incredibly hyped for this movie. The first on-screen appearance of Batman and Superman, obviously in Batman v Superman, was just so exciting. We've never seen them together on screen before. And I know it's really cool to see all these Marvel characters together, but Batman and Superman together in their first feature film, there's a lot to be excited about. And Batman taking inspiration, obviously, from The Dark Knight Returns. And the build up to the movie was very, very exciting. And this was early on in my Air Force career. I left basic training and I went to my tech school, graduated, and I had like a 2-week period, where I was able to come home and visit family and then head to England, my first duty station. And during that 2-week time frame was when the movie came out in March 2016. So it seemed like the stars were aligning for this movie. And turns out I did not enjoy it at all. Neither did my friends. I just could not believe. I was so flabbergasted that I just didn't enjoy the movie. And I kept reflecting on it, how much I didn't like it. And eventually when I got to England, I was in this like inductory class, first term airman's course. I think, that's what it's called. And they like 1 weekday, they're like, oh, all right, guys, we'll take you to see a movie. And obviously it was Batman v Superman. So I watched it a second time. And after watching it the second time is when I really decided, I didn't enjoy this movie. And it all comes down to, or not all of it, but a lot of it comes down to the characters and the takes on these characters. We'll start with Batman. I did not like this take on Batman. This just incredibly unhinged. I don't give a fuck anymore Batman, who's just murdering people left and right, carrying around guns. I just didn't jive with that take on Batman. I thought Ben Affleck did a phenomenal job with what was given to him. The material provided to him, I thought, was not very good. However, his performance was awesome. He looked fantastic. I thought the suit was awesome. I just don't like how they try to compile overall the movie. I didn't like how they try to fit too many things into once. They try to fit 10 years of movie building into this universe in one movie to make Justice League. And I thought that's what brought the movie down. But Superman is just moping around the whole movie. He's depressed. He's not the hopeful Superman that we all know and enjoy and love. And Wonder Woman, I didn't think she needed to be in the movie. And that freaking scene where Batman emails Wonder Woman all these stolen things from LexCorp, and they have created logos for all the other Justice League characters. And they just try to do too much with just a small amount of time. And the Doomsday aspect in the movie was ridiculous. And the worst character in the movie by far was Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor. I don't know what the hell was going on there. I hate that. I actually really hate that. I do not think his performance was good, or the take on the character was very good either. It's so cringe, and just Batman v Superman was just a huge, incredible disappointment to me. But my overall favorite scene in the film is the opening where Superman and Zod are battling in Man of Steel, and you see it from a human perspective. And that's a cool take because we're following Batman, who is a human, and he's rushing into the destruction. He's trying to save people. He helps a little kid get back in line with other kids as the teacher's leading him out of the destruction. And eventually it ends with him consoling hugging a girl as all the destruction's around and protecting her. That's very Batman. That's very Bruce Wayne. That's the most Batman part of the movie, in my opinion. And I really enjoy the opening to the movie. Everything after that kind of starts unraveling and falling apart. And I wasn't the biggest fan of Batman v Superman. Number 11. This is my least favorite out of the old Batman movies, and really everything past this movie. So 10 and up, I can watch it anytime and really enjoy. But we'll get back to number 11. And like I said, this is my least favorite of the old Batman movies. And let's focus in on the Burton movies, which honestly are my favorite, which might seem sacrilegious to some of the older heads out there. But I maybe it's because I didn't grow up with them, that I'm not really attached to them. There's no nostalgic tie or tether to these movies, so I don't really feel anything toward them. So I feel like I can watch them a little bit more objectively than others. And the bottom of those older movies is definitely Batman Returns for me. I just don't get this movie at all. I don't get the praise it gets in some other places. I know it's kind of seen as the lesser of the two Burton movies, but I know it seems to be held in higher regard than the Schumacher films, which is very confusing to me because I think they're pretty underrated, especially one of them. But Batman Returns does not work for me. Especially, let's start with Batman. Michael Keaton in this movie is just fine. I get it. He's the first, Batman, first big serious Batman, but I just don't get this amazing love for Michael Keaton, especially in this movie. I thought he was serviceable. He was just fine. I love him as an actor, but in Batman Returns, it just kind of seems like he's there. He's just in the movie. His suit, on the other hand, looks awesome. I like the redesign they did for this movie. It looks fantastic, but I thought Michael Keaton was okay. However, the two other main characters, Catwoman and Penguin, I think are horrible. I really do think they're horrible. I don't get this high regard for Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman. I think Anne Hathaway did a much better job, and especially Zoe Kravitz did a way better job than Michelle Pfeiffer. And I really don't understand that take. And I just did not get it, how she just falls out her window or falls out of a window, dies, cats bite her fingers, and now she's Catwoman. It just seemed a little ridiculous. And I get it, Batman is ridiculous, but it just seemed a little too ridiculous for me. And then Penguin is just incredibly ridiculous and over the top the whole movie. I did not jive with Danny DeVito's Penguin. I was not sympathetic toward his character whatsoever. And I just didn't, the takes on these characters didn't work for me. And that's the main part of the film. So that I just didn't overall enjoy it very much. I can't believe Christopher Walken was in this movie too. It's very weird. And so someone was telling me he has a son in the movie who's his son, but is an actor who's portraying his son, and he tries his best to do like a Christopher Walken impression. I've never noticed that until someone pointed it out to me. So that's funny. But
Dad, go save yourself. Dad, go.
I do think, however, on a positive note, getting away from the negative, that the film is shot beautifully. I think it looks awesome. And my favorite scene in the movie is the opening when the bat signal turns on and Bruce Wayne at Wayne Manor has like these reflecting lights that reflect the signal across, and they shine into like his study or office area. And you see Bruce just kind of like sitting here like this, and the light hits his eyes, and he looks up, stands up, and when he stands up, the bat signal is like right behind him. It's a beautiful shot, and the movie looks great all the way through. And some of the sets are awesome, and overall, the movie didn't work for me. And one thing about Batman movies, a good thing and a bad thing, is that they're always filmmaker driven. And those Burton movies are Tim Burton movies through and through. I really don't think he understood the Batman character very well, which isn't a necessity, but it's obvious when you watch his movies is that they're Tim Burton movies first and foremost. And I've never really been the biggest Tim Burton fan. So obviously I'm not going to enjoy them as much as others, but yeah, that's enough about Batman Returns. Let's get into the ones, the next 10 here. I really can watch it anytime and enjoy. So let's get into the ones I like a lot. Number 10, this movie was the first Batman movie released in theaters, and still to this day, it's absolutely hilarious. You just don't take it seriously and you will have a great time. If you enjoy watching B movies or even bad movies at times, or just really corny movies, I highly encourage you go watch Batman 66, number 10 on this list. It is a ton of fun. It is absolute nonsense from beginning to end. It really doesn't make any amount of sense, but it's just culminates that whole era of Batman and how they viewed him on Adam West's TV show, obviously, and especially in the comics. It kind of just combines all that together, and you really get to view what Batman was like during that time in the late 60s. And it's absurd, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Burt Ward as Robin is awesome. Cesar Romero as Joker, and all these other characters in the movie are just so over the top and absurd. And it's very James Bond-esque. And I've mentioned in other videos how Batman and James Bond are very connected in their film history and journeys throughout time. And you can obviously see it here. This is one of the beginnings, the first big Batman movie. And there's a lot of James Bond in it. And it's ridiculous, like I said, but I really enjoyed it and have a lot of fun. And my favorite scene in the movie, I mean, most of it is honestly like parts of my favorite scene, but my favorite scene in the movie by far is sometimes you just can't get rid of a bomb, and Batman is literally running around for it's like a 5-minute scene, or it feels like 20 minutes. He's just running around with a bomb repeatedly. He's trying to get rid of it. It's also, everyone knows the meme of the shark repellent and the bat, or the shark is biting Batman's leg and he's spraying it with the shark repellent bat spray. And another scene in the movie off the top of my head, I guess I'm just telling you all my favorites. Probably my favorite scene in the movie is the villains have constructed this dehydrator machine where they shoot people and it literally turns them into dust. And they head to this like world leaders conference. And you have like, this is the most stereotypical scene I've seen in a Batman movie. This would not fly today. And they have like the world leaders from like Russia, Italy, France, England. And they're the most stereotypical versions of these leaders. And it's cool to see the USSR in there. It's a 1966 film. And literally the villains just walk in and these leaders are they're so distracted because they're all screaming at each other and arguing that literally they just one by one dehydrate them and turn them into dust. And then later on in the movie, Batman and Robin come back and save them and they rehydrate them. And as they're rehydrating them one by one, they're all coming back. And instantly, as soon as they come back, they're arguing. It's hilarious. I really enjoy Batman 66. It's better than you think it is. Just don't take it too seriously. And yeah, number 10 on the list. Number 9, this movie was on repeat when I was a child on VHS. And it is the second of Joel Schumacher's films. And obviously, if you know anything, that's Batman and Robin. And this movie gets a lot of hate for being like the worst Batman movie ever made. And I'm not going to argue against that, but I am going to say that it is incredibly fun to watch. There's parts of it that are just so bad and so stupid and so absurd that if you just kind of just turn your brain off, it is a ton of fun and hilarious. From the moment I start this movie, from the moment it ends, for the most part, I am dying laughing. Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze is the greatest thing that's ever happened in cinema history. It's hilarious. His ice puns are awesome. The bat skates, when Batman and Robin literally have skates built in their boots. This movie is ridiculous. And it's obvious that Joel Schumacher was trying to harken back to films like Batman 66 and the Adam West era that he grew up with as a child. And it's obvious that it's trying to be that, but it's also the most like 90s movie I've ever seen. It's so incredibly cheesy. The movie's a cheeseburger from beginning to end, but if you don't take it too seriously and don't let it ruin your life and don't judge it like you're watching Schindler's List or something else, I think you can have a really good time. Uma Thurman's over the top as Poison Ivy. George Clooney's Batman. I mean, he's just George Clooney the whole time. He didn't really feel like Batman. However, his ending monologue in the movie, which also is my favorite scene in the movie, is very Batman and very underrated. And it just seems like somewhere there, buried in the snow, there is a really good Batman movie.
But she's not dead. We found her, restored her. She's still frozen, alive, waiting for you to find a cure.
She lives.
Yes.
She lives.
But vengeance isn't power. Anyone can take a life. But to give life, that's true power, a power you once had.
Obviously, it goes way over the top in certain aspects, and the film is just ridiculous from start to finish. But I do think it is an enjoyable watch, and yes, I think it's better than Batman Returns. I have a better time watching Batman and Robin than I do Batman Returns. I'm sorry. Number 8, and I know I already said that the Burton films weren't really my favorite, but this one will probably actually get me killed. And number 8 is Batman 89. I like this movie. I really enjoy parts of it. However, I still think this movie is just really overhyped. I think there's so many better Batman movies, and that's saying a lot because I do actually really enjoy this movie. But I just think getting back to the Tim Burton aspect of his films is that he doesn't really understand the Batman character. So, and for my personal taste, I'd like a filmmaker with someone with a little bit more understanding of the character. So it doesn't really jive with me personally. And like I said, there's no nostalgic tether. So I'm going to view these films a little bit more unbiased. I'm not saying you guys are biased, but I don't have a nostalgic tie to it. And that always heightens the overall quality of film of your choosing, what you grew up with. I mean, Batman Forever. Batman and Robin and Batman Forever I enjoy more than these just because I watched them growing up. But getting back to Batman 89, I think Michael Keaton's awesome in this movie. He's a lot better than in Batman Returns. It does seem like he shows up really wanting to do the role. He has a great Batman voice, and just his Bruce Wayne's awesome too. And the let's get nuts scene is just legendary. I do think Jack Nicholson's Joker is good. I wouldn't necessarily say it's great. It seems like he still wasn't all in. I know he didn't really want to do the role, that they had to pay him more than they paid Michael Keaton. He was the highest paid actor for the movie. It just seemed like he still wasn't all in on the role to me. I think he could have went a little bit more into it. I do like some of the sets and some of the buildup, and the cinematography, just like in Batman Returns, is awesome. But the most important thing about Batman 89 is what it means for not just Batman film history, but for superhero film history. Before this, there wasn't really a serious superhero film made. The only one that I could think of before this was Superman, but it was still done with a little bit more of a childlike aspect to it. It wasn't very necessarily that mature. Batman 89, it was a long road to get this film made, and it finally coming out in 89 was a change and a shift in the film history and what we thought would work and what would sell. And it propelled not just the Batman character forward, but so many other characters, comic book characters forward, and other films forward. And it's really just a monumentous moment in film history, obviously, but obviously in Batman history. And that's why I think it's held in such high regard, is because it changed and did so much for the Batman character and others as well. Also, my apologies, I forgot to mention my favorite scene in Batman 89, which is the final shot, the reveal of the bat signal, which just looks incredible. And just the Thunder's theme that Danny Elfman created for the movie just makes this scene so iconic. And it's so obvious that every Batman movie after this, or anything Batman animated series, obviously took inspiration from Danny Elfman's score. And it's so iconic, and the score and the shot together just make this scene so memorable and beautiful. Number 7. This is the final of the 4 Burton Schumacher films, and obviously I've already listed the other 3, so you know this film has to be Batman Forever, and I will forever adore this movie. I think it's so misunderstood, and it gets a lot of hate for being just... It's kind of compared and stuck with Batman and Robin, and that movie has a lot of stink on it for good reasons. I can acknowledge. I'm not going to deny that, but I think Batman Forever is such a huge step up in quality from Batman and Robin, and I think Joel Schumacher really nailed kind of harkening back to the golden era of Batman, the Adam West version, and also bringing it into the modern day, which was the 90s. So the film feels very 90s in the best way possible. And I think the most underappreciated part of the film is Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer killed it as Batman Bruce Wayne. I thought he was awesome. I thought he showed a sincere and understanding Bruce Wayne whenever he was talking with Edward Nygma and let him show him his experiment. But also his Batman wasn't a simp. His Batman was awesome. Nicole Kidman has to be the most beautiful Batman love interest of all time. My God, she is stunning in this movie. And I loved her character and performance. And what I mean by Batman's not a simp is whenever he goes into Nicole Kidman's room and she's very much interested in him that night for good reason. And he just doesn't simp. He just says, you know what? No, you only love me because you only interested in me because I'm Batman. And then eventually, Bruce Wayne, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I just think the film's really underrated. It's shot beautifully. It has some of the best constructed sets I've ever seen in the movie. The movie starts off with this amazing bank heist with these two-faced thugs, and just the sets they built with that look beautiful. And it's very much a neon dystopian feel, almost like a Blade Runner-esque Gotham. It feels so fantasy-driven, which I really enjoy. It goes all in on that. That's what I love about Batman Forever, is that it goes all in on what it wants to do. And I think it does it really, really well. And getting back to the sets they built for Two-Face's headquarters, how one side of the room is dark, one side of the room is light. I just think it's an awesome movie, and it's made with a lot of care and attention and love. And I think it's written really well as well. And I have so many favorite scenes in the movie with Batman Forever, but by far my favorite scene in the movie is also one of my favorite Batman scenes ever. And it's whenever Batman is running out of the fire after surviving the blast from Two-Face. I'll just show it. I have to just show it, but he's just running out of the fire. And it's one of the most beautiful, badass scenes I've ever seen, not just in a Batman movie, but really any movie, period. I love that shot so much. And I also just love Batman Forever. I think it's so underrated and underappreciated. Number 6, if you're a fan of Batman in any capacity, I don't understand how you don't love this film. This entire movie is just a celebration of everything Batman, especially his film's history. And it's not afraid to show the goofy, corny sides of Batman in every aspect. And obviously this movie is the Lego Batman movie, which I cannot believe how good it ended up being. I remember going to see the original Lego movie, and Batman's character in that movie was one of my favorites. He's so absurd and over the top, and I loved it. And whenever they greenlit the Lego Batman movie, I was like, oh, can they really stretch this out for an hour and a half period? And they did, and they did an incredible job. And Will Arnett's voice acting for Batman is just, God, it's sublime. It's perfect. It's super over the top and obnoxious, and he's an asshole. And it's just like I said, the film is not afraid of the goofy side of Batman. And it's able to do that because it's a Lego Batman movie. You're already not really taking it that seriously because it's Lego. So it definitely uses that Lego aspect to its advantage at the highest level. And I think the movie is just a celebration of Batman's character throughout the ages. And if I don't get how you don't love the Lego Batman movie. The opening scene of the Bat song, he's disguising himself as a mayor, and he breaks down in the song, "Don't let Batman start singing." He's just shredding guitar and beating all the villains because he's Batman. And I just adore the movie. I could watch it anytime and laugh my ass off. I love the Lego Batman movie. And there's a lot of charm in the movie as well. The whole story of the Lego Batman movies is centers around family, and Bruce opening himself back up to letting that family in. And it's a story that's been told many times with Batman, but I think it's done very well in this movie, especially for what it is. But it's just really one of the best animated films I've seen in a long, long time. One of my favorite Batman movies, and I can't say enough about how much I love the Lego Batman movie. And my favorite scene by far in the Lego Batman movie is at the end where Bruce has to go back, or Batman has to go back to the Phantom Zone. And because he's a bad guy, and he made a promise he'd go back. So he saves everyone, and he shoots the Phantom Zone gun on himself, and he's floating up in the air. And it's just really dramatic and sad moment. Everyone's watching him, and he finally opens up to his family, and he's floating up in the air. And it's a super cool wide shot, and he gets to the top, and it's like he's ascending to the heavens. And then the movie doesn't take itself too seriously. So Batman smacks the Phantom Zone wall because he became a good person, and he falls down, and it's just hilarious. And it breaks the tension of the movie very well, and it doesn't let itself be taken too seriously for too long. And I just adore this movie more than I ever thought I would. The next top 5 films on this list are the top tier Batman movies, in my opinion. You could really interchange any of these 5 in any order you want, or incorporate others from the bottom. But I really do believe these top 5 are the top echelon of Batman movies. And really, they're just so easily interchangeable, in my opinion. But I'll start out this top tier Batman list at number 5 with Batman Mask of the Phantasm. And it's definitely done in the vein of the animated series. It feels like a continuation, but it is most certainly its own story. You could just watch it by itself, and it's incredibly enjoyable and very much a Batman movie. And I think it had a lot to do with inspiring other Batman stories and Batman on film. It's the perfect formula for a great Batman movie, a personal side to the story, and also Batman changing, becoming something else. And it touches on his origins a lot in this, which the animated series never really did. They kind of just got right into the groove of Batman being Batman. And Mask of the Phantasm kind of uncovers a lot of very cool and very vital components of that Bruce Wayne's particular story and origins, and how tied to his parents' death he is, and why it matters so much to him. And there's so many just top tier Batman moments in Mask of the Phantasm. And the villain itself is incredible. How that is tied to his origins as well really gives it this incredibly personal Batman story, which I just really enjoy. The art design is fantastic. It is Batman the Animated Series at its finest, but it's an actual feature film. And I adore Mask of the Phantasm for what it is. It's certainly, in my opinion, the best animated Batman movie ever made, the most top tier. A few have come close to it, but I think it's almost impossible to overcome how great Mask of the Phantasm is. That's really truly how I believe how good it is. And I think it's the perfect formula for a Batman movie. And everything that I love about Batman is in Mask of the Phantasm. And my favorite scene by far in the movie is the last 2 or 3 minutes. The conversation that Bruce and Alfred are having is incredible, and it shows the character arc and character change that's going on in Batman, how vengeance is not the answer, which is, like I said, the formula. It's been done later on in other Batman movies. I think it was definitely inspired by this movie. And the ending of the music, that opera singing, and the score in this movie is fantastic as well. The score of Batman sulking in the rain at the end, and then like the bat signal turning on and him lifting his head up and then just, grappling toward the screen. And that's how the movie ends. And you just see a lot of that in future Batman projects, especially in live action. And I definitely think they were looking at Mask of the Phantasm as the good formula for a great Batman movie. Number 4, this is one of the most emotional Batman movies for me for many reasons. It was the ending of the trilogy, the Dark Knight trilogy. So obviously you already know what it is. The Dark Knight Rises. And just the last 10 minutes of this movie are some of my favorite moments in film history and as well as Batman history. And I think it's some of the best. There's so much to the ending of a trilogy, right? I mean, Return of the King is legendary for being the end of a trilogy. I think 3 movies is just the perfect formula for a series. And, whenever those series just continue to go on and on and on, they start depreciating in value, in my opinion. And you've seen it with Fast and Furious, and you see it with the Marvel movies now, in my opinion. I think they're just kind of losing their inherent value by just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And Christopher Nolan knew when and he knew how to end this Dark Knight trilogy. I think it ended in a beautiful way. And I know the film gets a lot of hate for some reason, and it's looked at a lot lesser than The Dark Knight and even Batman Begins. But I think it's the weakest out of the trilogy, but it's still such a monumental moment in Batman history. It being the first Batman movie with a feeling of an actual end. And it's just so emotional for me of watching, the Batman that I grew up with, the Batman that is my Batman, finally come to an end and do it in such a heroic and incredible way. And very Christopher Nolan, a very much a Christopher Nolan ending, I think was just why I hold it in such high regard. And speaking of performances of Batman, I thought Christian Bale was at his best in the Dark Knight Rises. He did a lot. And he was Bruce Wayne a lot in the movie too. And I think an older Bruce Wayne, it was a really interesting take on the character. And I mean, I love Christian Bale's Batman. There's really not much else to say about how much I love him. I even think Anne Hathaway's Catwoman was pretty exceptional. But Tom Hardy's Bane is so foreboding and intimidating when he walks on screen. And I love his design, the character design. I love his voice, even though you can't really understand what he's saying. It's just so intimidating. That opening scene on the plane is it's just an amazing action set piece. It is incredible. I love that opening of the movie, and all the other Bane moments in the movie are just awesome. Tom Hardy is great, and it's just, I think it's Christopher Nolan at his best. I really love The Dark Knight Rises. I don't get the hate. I don't understand the hate I can understand it to an extent at the level. However, no, I don't understand that. But I love The Dark Knight Rises. It's probably the most emotional Batman movie for me overall. I get incredibly emotional watching The Dark Knight Rises, and I can't express enough of how much I adore the movie. And my favorite scene by far is really just like the last 10 minutes, last 5-10 minutes, that whole ending, how it's kind of starts piecing together. And just that last shot of the movie is incredible. And that Alfred head nod in that restaurant in Paris is just, I'm getting chills right now just thinking about it. It's beautiful. Number 3, this is probably most people's one, and I can easily understand why you would put that as number 1. But for me, I guess I never really laid these terms out for you guys, but I kind of rate these as they're Batman movies, but I rate them as what are the best Batman movies? What movies really evoke Batman? And I may not do it with every single one of them, but for these top three, I think that's kind of how they're determined is how good of a Batman movie are they, not just film. And that's why number three is The Dark Knight. And I think it probably may be the best overall film on this list. But for on any list, but for personal reasons, I put it at number three. I think there are two that I enjoy a little bit more than this, but as an overall film, I mean, The Dark Knight's almost cinema perfection. It's one of the greatest comic book movies of all time, if not the greatest. And it really changed the game for comic book movies that were finally taking that seriously, I believe, in 2008. And it changed so many people's minds, and it was a phenomenon. I remember everyone and their mom and grandma was going to see The Dark Knight when it came out. I was still very young at the time. I think I was 11, but I remember the hype around The Dark Knight, and it's just a great name for a movie, is it not? And it's one of Christopher Nolan's best movies. It has some of the best performances in a Batman movie by far, and I still believe to this day that Heath Ledger has done the best portrayal of a Batman villain yet. Even now, I would still say that his Joker is sensational. He's a scene stiller. I've never seen a better version of the Joker yet in a Batman movie, personally, yet. Hopefully that'll change one day. But Heath Ledger's Joker is legendary. Gary Oldman's Commissioner Gordon, or he becomes Commissioner Gordon in the film, but he's so integral to the plot and just amazing in that role. Obviously, Christian Bale's Batman's top of his game. I love Bale's Batman, and he's awesome in this movie. And how much Batman means to the city and how much he does for the city is just so awesome. And one underappreciated character in the movie for sure, I believe, is Aaron Eckhart's Harvey Dent Two-Face. I think his arc is kind of he's almost the main character of the film in a way. And I think that comes back to the Batman movie. This is so much more of this is equally a Joker film, a Two-Face film. It's more about an overarching story in Gotham City than it is just a Batman movie. And even though it ends in a phenomenal way and very much a Batman way, I do think every other character is just as important as Batman, which isn't a negative on the film. It's just, for my personal taste, I enjoy more focusing on Batman specifically. But the film doesn't do that, but it does it in the best way possible. I adore The Dark Knight. It's a legendary film. It's a masterpiece. And out of all the scenes to pick to be my favorite in the film, it has to be the ending. Batman realizing that he can be more for the city. There's memes about this all the time. People still say this to this day. He's not the hero that Gotham deserves, but the one it needs right now. When he decides that and he just says, I killed those people, and Batman's whatever the city needs him to be. It's such a Batman moment, and my favorite part of the film, and Gordon's ending monologue as Batman's running away from the police and his son questioning his father, like, why is he running away? Like, he didn't do anything wrong. And that's what Batman can be. Batman is whatever the city needs him to be. And the best movies in Batman history understand that and utilize that very well. And The Dark Knight does it at the highest level. Number two, this was my favorite Batman movie for a long, long, long time. And it's just recently been eclipsed, pardon the pun, and you'll understand that later. But I adore Batman Begins for so many reasons. Just like Batman 89 changed the perception of comic book films going forward, Batman Begins did the same thing in 2005. Not shortly after, a year later, James Bond was rebooted as well. And I talked earlier about how they're just kind of combined together. They kind of echo each other as films went on. James Bond and Batman. And obviously James Bond, was inspired by Batman Begins, and they did a reboot as well in a very more dark and serious take on the character. And Batman Begins just really changed the game for so many reasons. And for the longest time, it's been the best, in my opinion, the best overall Batman movie. Batman is the focus of the film. It's his origin story laid out in front of us. And the journey he goes on and the character arc that he has throughout the movie from beginning to end is awesome. And I love how the film is structured at the beginning, where it's in kind of in the present day, then back in the past, present day, back in the past. And it does it in a really interesting way that touches on Bruce's origins and why he chose to travel the world and learn how to fight and understand crime and be a leader. It's the best it's ever been done. And I think Batman Begins is so well done that we never need another Batman origin story. And I think other films understood that perfectly, that there's no reason to do it again because Batman Begins has already done it for us. And I think it helped general audiences understand Batman even more and understand why he doesn't kill and why he doesn't do certain things. Because, most people aren't reading the comics. And Batman Begins did that for most people. Before that, Batman was just Batman. He never really had an origin story. And Batman Begins providing that to the masses has done so much for the character and everyone understanding that, in future films, they never talk about Batman's origins. They kind of hint at it a little bit, but everyone already knows. And the main reason for that is Batman Begins. It's just done so much for Batman as a character and given him so much more depth that can be understood from just the average fan of film or Batman. And I adore the movie. I think Liam Neeson's Ra's al Ghul is super underrated and underappreciated. I think his villain is awesome. It's a very personal story, and you understand his character, you understand his motivations and why he wants to reset Gotham. And I think, it touches on Batman's kind of greatest flaw is that he doesn't kill. And it really helps watchers understand why he doesn't kill. It is a flaw. I would say personally it is a flaw, but you understand why he doesn't do that in the best way possible. I love Batman Begins. For the longest time, it's been my favorite Batman movie, but it's just recently been eclipsed. But overall, my favorite scene in the movie for Batman Begins is the train scene at the very end where Batman beats Ra's al Ghul and Commissioner Gordon uses the Batmobile, or Detective Gordon, or was it Lieutenant, uses the Batmobile to blow up the railing. So the train's going to end and not head to Wayne Tower, destroy the city. And he tells Liam, or Ra's al Ghul says, "Are you finally willing to do what's necessary? Kill him." And he tells him, I don't have to kill you. And he throws, it's one of the most badass scenes. I'm getting chills thinking about it, where he throws a batarang in the window, creating a draft, and then throws bombs behind him, blows up the train, and the other parts of the train leave him. And he says, "I don't have to kill you, but I don't have to save you." When he puts his cape up and he flies out, oh my God, the cinematography is amazing in the movie. It looks beautiful from the beginning to end. And that shot is just one of my favorite Batman shots of all time. And like I said, this has been my favorite Batman movie for a long time, but it's just been very recently eclipsed. And this finally brings us to number one, my favorite Batman movie of all time. And if you know anything about Batman and pay attention to anything Batman recently, or have been to the theaters recently, then you know why this is my number one. And obviously it's Matt Reeves' The Batman. I talked about how excited I was for Batman v Superman, and I tried my best to not be hyped for the Batman, but all signs were pointing toward this movie is going to be different. It's going to be something new, like nothing we've ever seen. And my hype paid off this time. It feels good. Like Kevin said in The Office, it feels good. It feels good to win one. And that's how it felt when The Batman came out. It was everything I thought it was going to be and more. I've seen it 8 times now. But most people think I'm a lunatic because I've seen it 8 times. And that's only 24, if my math is right, 8 times 3, 24 hours of my life. So I've been alive how many thousands of days, and I've only spent 1 day of that watching The Batman. That's nothing. That is literally the smallest little speck. That's not even like 0.001% of my life. So I'm really not that much of a lunatic when you think about it. I plan on seeing it 2 more times before it comes to HBO Max very soon, next week. So, or at least I'll see it 2 more times before I watch it at home. I just feel like I owe it to Warner Brothers and the creators to just see it again. And also I just want to see it again, especially in IMAX. This film's just a masterpiece, masterclass of understanding the Batman character and everything I love about Batman. is in the Batman. I love this take on the character. I love the cinematography. I love the detective angle, the noir crime drama thriller story. Robert Pattinson absolutely nailed it as Batman, as a detective character. And also, it shows how flawed he is. But his acting in the suit is the best it's ever been done. He's my favorite Batman to date. Every other character in the movie absolutely nailed their roles so hard. Everyone from Penguin, Colin Farrell's Penguin, to Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman, to Jeffrey Wright's Gordon, John Turturro's Falcone. Everyone in the movie did a phenomenal job. And it all comes back to Matt Reeves. And he's the first filmmaker who really understood Batman, I believe, really understood to his deepest levels. And the whole movie is just a love letter to Batman. And I cannot get enough of it. I cannot wait to see it again. I don't know if we'll ever get a Batman movie that I'll love more than the Batman. I hope so. I hope the sequel is even better, but I cannot imagine loving a Batman movie any more than I love the Batman. It's my favorite to date. It's the most personal. It's the most Batman we've ever seen. I freaking love the Batman so much. I mean, I have like 10,000, I have like 5-6 shirts now of the Batman. Everything I have now, all I think about is the Batman. That's all I think about. Just how great the movie is. I cannot believe it exists. And I just don't think there's a movie that really understands the character any better than the Batman. And my favorite scene, it's so hard to pick because the opening monologue is just brilliant. It's chill inducing. And whenever Batman's introduced, and there's so many amazing scenes in the Batman, but I think by far my overall favorite scene is the ending monologue, Wednesday, November 6th. And it goes on and on talking about how vengeance isn't the answer. And I need to be more. The city needs hope. And just that ending monologue alone is everything of why I love Batman in 1 3-minute, 5-minute period. And whenever he carries that girl, you can see how dirty, disgusting he is. And he's been up all night helping people, and he carries that girl and places her on that gurney. And she doesn't want to let him go. And he's still getting used to that. And he says, the city's scarred like me. And when she grabs his arm, he's still getting used to it. And he puts his hand on her arm or on her hand. And it just reflects his character growth and him becoming Batman and growing. And just that moment alone, like I said, is why I love Batman. And I just can't get enough of it. And I cannot wait for the sequel. And hopefully it's even better than the Batman. But yeah, this brings us to the end of the video. Let me know what you think down in the comments of the video. If you enjoyed this video and you got something out of it, consider subscribing. Got more content coming soon. I really don't know what else to say. Let me know how much my list sucks down below if you believe that. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, I really, truly appreciate it. I don't know why you're wasting your time watching this when you can go watch any of these movies from this list. Yeah, have a good day. I'll see you on the next one.